So I got three all-time point guards here. It's actually, well, we always talked about John Stockton, but I want to mention
Yeah.
we actually compared Stockton and Isaiah already. But here we have Chris Paul ranked pretty high. Chris Paul, Jason Kidd
Chris
a little bit
Paul's.
lower, and Steve
Mhm.
Nash all the way down here. What would you think around these three? Your opinion on CP3, Jason Kidd, Steve Nash? Get your opinion on.
Okay, so just these
Yeah,
three players.
because they're
So we're
kind of
not saying my
they're kind of
favorite point guard of
contemporaries
all time.
actually, right?
Okay.
What would you choose? I mean, I know in my list I have CP3 and then Kidd and Nash, but what about you?
Pretty close. CP3 and Kidd are pretty close in my books. I would have a tough time choosing them. I really like Steve Nash as a player, but I would probably take either CP3 or Jason Kidd ahead of Steve Nash, in my opinion. If you actually watched, Jason Kidd was a very special player back in the day. His basketball IQ was just amazingly high. The way he played, he was almost kind of like he played kind of like a little bit like your Scottie Pippen, Magic Johnson type, where he was such a great rebounder for a point guard, and his IQ was so high that he was always at the right spots, thinking two steps ahead. He would get the rebound, and he would instinctively know after the rebound exactly what to do. Push it up the court. The guy's a one-man fast break sometimes too. So Kidd was special. He was a special player. Chris Paul, in my opinion, is also one of the best point guards I've ever seen. The guy was super competitive. He was very complete, one of the most complete point guards because the guy's a great shooter, great ball handling. He can drive, he can penetrate. He's clutch, very, very clutch. And he had it all. He was a very good defender as well.
That's why I have him like kind of above here because like Jason Kidd he had great defense, great at triple doubles, doing everything. He just wasn't very good at shooting. Nash, kind of the opposite.
Yeah, he's not the
Nash
shooter.
was such a great shooter. He was 50, 40, 90 guy. Didn't have any defense though, right? So it's kind of like, well, for me, like CP3 is like the kind of guy that combines them both, right? He has Nash's like offensive abilities with Jason Kidd's defensive abilities. That's what kind of put him over the top for me, I guess. But in the modern NBA, I believe the thing was I talked to a lot of casual fans. I think CP3 is kind of underrated, and the reason he's underrated, I think, is because he's just unlucky in the playoffs. A lot of injuries happen. That's just part of the game. But I think if CP3 had a ring, like he'd be ranked much higher. But it's just he was unlucky in the playoffs. And that's why I think he's kind of underrated by most modern fans.
Yeah, well, Chris Paul is easily in my top 5 point guards of all time. Easily.
Yeah, but for
maybe even top
for
3.
other people, I think they rank Steph Curry ahead of him, which I don't rank Steph Curry ahead of Chris Paul, but a lot of people do, right?
Yeah, I think the thing about Steph is Steph is a very good player, but I think for me, I never thought of him as a point guard anyways, and so that's why when people ask me,
he's like a
point
shooting
guards, or who are
guard.
your top point guards all the time, exactly, he's a hybrid. He's a scoring point guard. So when people ask me who I think are the greatest point guards of all time, like I don't even think of Curry, not because I don't think he's a great player, but it's just that I don't even think he really plays like a point guard sometimes, and that's why I don't normally include him. Not to say he's not a good player at all. He's a very good player. Yeah, but Chris Paul was special. I've always really liked Chris Paul's game. Yeah, for example, if we watch Chris Paul, one thing that you would notice with Chris Paul is that, first of all, he's really clutch, and like you mentioned, he's an all-around player. He's a great defender, great at shooting, great at controlling the momentum of the game, which is what a good point guard would actually do. And one reason why that Clippers team, they didn't really go as deep, as they could have, well, the competition, of course. But at the same time, I think there's still some stuff missing from that team. Chris Paul himself is great, but I feel that some of the other players, like DeAndre Jordan, great defender, good rebounder, but he couldn't really score. He was more of an alley-oop guy.